Hello, and thank you for joining me for a very special episode of Saturdays with Miss J. This is pre recorded because it is actually our anniversary weekend. And so instead of spending my Saturday morning with you, I'm going to spend this pre recorded time with you so that this weekend we can just focus on playing, love, renewal, all of the things that we do when we're trying to just commemorate another year of life lessons, love lessons, etc. So I have a special guest. Obviously, I'm saying we. I have a special guest today. His name is Mr. Snipes, as you can see. He is the Mr. to my Mrs. J, and so I'm always happy to have him with me on the show. And there's a lot of people that like having him here. So sometimes, I don't let that go to my head because they like him better than me. But anyway, it's my show. So it is what it is. As I teased the last week, June is Love Month in the Snipes household, and therefore we will be having some relationship topics coming on every Saturday this month, in the month of June. My lovely husband, if you haven't caught an episode of us before, does some relationship counseling, family counseling, etc. And just a very helpful and useful ear. Of course, I am a coach and do the holistic perspective of coaching, not just a career and leadership, but also a life. And so that's why we are having this conversation today, not only to give you a deeper dive into who Miss J is, but to also bring back my lovely husband so that we can talk about relationships and hopefully you will get something out of this. So thank you for being with me today.
No problem, no problem. Thank you for allowing me to join you in this Saturday pre-recorded engagement and experience with your audience. Thank you.
Great. All right. So our wedding anniversary is on June the 7th. And so we are going to talk about things that we wish we had known 13 years ago, because this is our 13th year of marriage. And so 13 years ago, we were newlyweds. We had decided to love each other forever, to walk down the aisle and to do all of these other things. You hadn't decided to love me forever?
Well, not 13 years ago. It was before that. We got married 13 years ago. So technically it was.
But when we stood at the altar, that was like it. No turning back.
Oh, there was no turning back when I got you that ring. Shoot.
See,
that's when there was no turning back.
See,
just saying.
There's differences. But anyway, so we decided to take this journey of life together as husband and wife and just kind of take the hills, take the valleys, and take it all together, hand in hand. So if we could talk to ourselves 15 years ago or 13 years ago?
17.
No, you weren't thinking about marrying me. Anyway, whatever the case may be, pre-marriage, what are we in for? Let's take a look back and see. So we have each prepared 3 different lessons that we would tell our younger selves as we stood at the entrance to married life, and hopefully you can get something out of it. If you are married, or if you are contemplating marriage, or if you're already engaged. So this is just our love and life lessons. And since I have a guest, I will let you start, Mr. Snipes. Tell me, what's your first thing you wish you had known?
The first thing I wish I would have known is not to assume that you would know it, because I knew it.
Okay.
And so I think at times there is an assumption that you know what I like. Like, I can say you know what I like, but you know what I like in all situations, all circumstances. Or you know where I am, or you know how I feel, or I said it one time and that should be enough. And so I learned not to assume that's the case, because it really wasn't the case. Right. You know, there will be times that I feel a certain way and I think you understood, and I will be operating with you as if you understood and you didn't understand it, and vice versa. I think on the other side, you think I would know, and I really didn't know, but I felt like I should have known because I was now married to you. But it was just this unrealistic assumption that I knew things or that you knew things that just wasn't reality. We had to learn each other. We had to learn each other in different environments. We had to realize that when we were dating, we both had homes to go back to. When we're engaged, we both had homes to go back to. So it wasn't living with each other all the time,
right,
in highs and in lows, and trying to make it work and just assuming you can read my mind. So do not assume she will know it.
Right. That is a good lesson. Sometimes we think that when we're walking into marriage that we've chosen the person that knows us better than anyone. Oh, he knows me more than anyone else has ever known, or she knows me more than anyone else. So you assign that knowledge to every category,
Yep.
even though you've never experienced it,
Yep.
you've never been there, etc. And then when you do that, sometimes you can have the false expectation that the person knows exactly what is needed, what you want. And then there is room for frustration,
Correct,
dissatisfaction,
Correct.
etc. So if you don't assume
Correct.
that the other person knows, you can save yourself a lot of
Well, you still got to learn. So even if you don't assume, in some ways you save yourself some heartache because unmet expectations
Yes.
you save, but it doesn't mean that you don't still do the work. You still got to do the work to figure it out. And I'm not going to say the next one because that goes into my next one. So
Okay.
I'm not going to say that. So what did you learn?
All right. So you know what? I'm going to take one of my lessons and I'm going to insert here. And the lesson that I have written down, I did make notes because I wanted to make sure I stayed on track and we didn't just go on a tangent in this episode. But always stay learning, which I think pairs perfectly with your first lesson.
Yep.
And this is why I would tell my younger self this. Is because when you are dating someone, when you have decided to have build a life with someone, you have kind of already built this construct of what he or she would be like, based on your dating relationship, based on your habits. But again, there's a lot of areas that haven't blended until you've crossed the threshold. You're living together as husband and wife. One of the things that's good to know is that life experiences will change your mate, and that who they were or who you assumed them to be will evolve over the course of your marriage. So pay attention to what's happening to your spouse, what's happening with your spouse, because even though two become one, he is still a whole person that is living his life journey, and I am still a whole person that's living my life journey. And there are some things that you're going to experience that may shift your perspectives, or vice versa.
Most definitely.
And so as a wife, I have to understand those things. I have to understand when to step in and when to fall back. I have to understand when to take action and when to follow. All of those things is not, the person who you married isn't going to stay the same. And so you have to learn to grow together through all the things. And if this person, your spouse, you have seen them go through the same sorts of situations and they seem like they might be in a cycle, you have to understand that it's for them to learn, and you can't push them into learning a lesson that they have to learn themselves. You just have to be supportive in that evolution. So as a spouse, I have to be mindful that you are living your life and I'm living my life in parallel and hopefully and in sync. But still, there are going to be things that happen to you or that affect you that will shift. the being of who you are. And because we're in a lifelong journey, I will also have to make shifts to mirror that.
Yeah.
I
mean,
wouldn't have thought that.
Yep.
I wouldn't have thought that in the beginning.
I mean, it makes sense. I think, we're not a vacuum. We're not a snapshot at that point, even though sometimes we feel like we are. And so as each person's changed with, in our case, when we met, we were both same position at an institution.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we were engaged, you left the field altogether and went to, human resources. And then when we were married, it was, still different.
Right.
And it's just like, who you were dating versus who you are married. And then as you go or engaged and then married, like you change, you evolve. So you learn how to exist in those different situations and different circumstances and how to interact.
Right.
So, yeah.
But not only that, but you're going to change when you become parents
Mm-hmm.
of one.
Yeah.
And then you're going to change when you become parents of multiples.
Yeah.
You're going to have those changes when you change geography.
Mm-hmm.
When other relationships change, sometimes that gets shifted. So you are always going to be growing and evolving, and as a wife, you have to learn consistently, continuously learn who your husband is and who he is becoming, and vice versa for husbands and wives, or wives and wives, whatever relationship you choose to be in.
Correct.
All right, so what's number 2?
You have to clarify things with communication. I think sometimes, again, kind of going with the first one, you make the assumption, you don't really want to communicate, or your communicate starts to get slack or relax, or your shorthand communication.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's real important when communicating, both saying it, clarifying it, paraphrasing it, making sure you communicate it in a way that they receive it. Because again, it's a different person than you. So there's often still those assumptions of, oh, I think this is what they meant. And you get to the point where you can't assume that's what they meant. You have to clarify. Right. Because that both saves you headache, heartache, and it helps you continue to strive together in an appropriate way. So if it's how to communicate when, you're happy, how to communicate when you need something, and again, being able to communicate your needs. Sometimes people feel like, being able to communicate your needs and communicate it in a way where the person hears you. Okay. So if it's like, hey, I have a need, I'm letting you know, here's what my need is. Did you hear what I said, what my need is? And hey, I'm speaking with you about this. Hey, I'm speaking to you about what I'm afraid of, what I like. Right. Like really letting that person know, and don't assume they should automatically know because you're married.
Right.
Because if you assume they should automatically know, and in reality they don't know, then it's a failed expectation. There's tension. Resentment can be there. There's a void. Like it just becomes more of a mess than it need be.
So those two go together. The assumption that you just said is lesson 1.
Yep.
And then the clarifying
communication.
You
gotta communicate. Even when you don't think you should communicate. Like, this shouldn't be what I need to say. Is this what you mean? Because sometimes it's completely different.
Right.
Again,
because we're out hearing through our own lens.
Correct.
And so, or through our own filters. Correct. And so you might be speaking in a way that makes 100% sense to you.
Correct.
But I haven't walked in your shoes, lived your experiences, processed the whole thing that you've been already thinking about for the past 60 minutes. And so when I hear it, I might receive it differently.
Yeah.
So, as a partner in a two-way communication, you have to ask questions, but you also need to be willing to clarify and make sure that the person understands what you're saying. Correct. That they get the message that you are trying to communicate the right way.
Yeah.
The way that you're trying to communicate it.
And don't be upset with communication if they don't understand, if they ask for clarity, even if you think they should know it. Again, clarify. Because again, I think sometimes there's this assumption, it's a snapshot and it should be the same, and it doesn't allow for growth and evolution, knowing that people are different. So that's my 2.
All right. So I'll go to my second one. And I'm sure if you're in my generation, maybe, I'm not going to say everyone, but you've probably heard the saying, men are from Mars and women are from Venus. And, at first I was like, I've never read the book. There's a whole book out there, but I just have a gut feeling after 13 years that they're talking about the differences between men and women. And a lot of those differences are things that we are taught in our environmental factors, the households that we grew up, the social kind of experience, the social aspects of manhood and womanhood, the stereotypes of masculinity and femininity and gender roles and all of those things. And even though all of those things have an influence on the person that we become, and how our parents or we've chosen to follow those norms, etc., when you are coming together with another person in marriage, you have to understand that all of those threads that have been woven together to make that person is different from yours and from a different perspective. If you are it's going to be from a different perspective, period, but then it might be a wider gap there if you are in a male and female relationship, because men and women process things differently. They prioritize things differently. They show up for each other differently. The way that I want to be cared for might be different from how he wants to be cared for. And so there's a lot of differences in the way that we are, quote unquote, taught to be a man or taught to be a woman, and how that affects us when we come together. Because if I am come from a background where we talk through everything, the hard things, the great things, a very expressive and communicative household, and then I have a partner who's maybe dad role modeled that, communication isn't necessarily that. We just handle the business. We make sure the house is taken care of, the bills are paid, everybody's safe. Then we don't necessarily have to talk about the bad stuff. We can just avoid that. But did you die?
Right.
Your feelings might be hurt, but did you die?
Right.
Then we are already working at odds, because my standpoint and your standpoint is in polar opposites.
Right.
So you have to give accommodation and grace and some understanding and a level of flexibility there, because we are two coming together. And my female perspective, my female vantage point, my female experiences are going to be very different from my spouse's male perspective, male vantage point, and male experiences. And that's in this relationship or in a heterosexual relationship. And so I can't discount those things or think that mine are better or always right. Because of that, I just have to understand that we are looking at things potentially through different lenses.
Yeah. I mean, I read a book, not that book, Men Are From Decatur, Women From Buckhead. People from Atlanta gonna get me on that one. But it was the whole thing of understanding what people want. And it started with the premise that a woman needs to trust you. And if they trust you and feel safe with you, then everything else doesn't really matter. I mean, there's still things that matter, but it's like those are the foundation. Can they trust you? And do they feel safe with you? And as a man, if you're trying to build a relationship with, a woman, that's what you need to start with. If those two things are always yes, everything else can be built upon it. If one of those things is no, it's going to fall, it's going to crumble. So I think in that aspect of, if that is true, women need to feel safe and, trust the man. I think for the men, it is something different in the sense of, a level of respect, understanding what a man feels like they need to do. Like, again, those societal things of like male and, masculinity, being a male, being a man, and how that appears and how you choose to engage with that.
Right.
And so.
But there's different levels there to safety. Some women want to feel physically safe and protected.
Yeah.
Some women need to feel financially safe and protected. Some people need to feel spiritually covered and protected. Some women want all three, but there are different priorities there.
Yeah.
So you have to understand. You just can't be like, this is the one key to the lock of trust.
Right.
There might be, there are different priorities from your mate's perspective that you probably want to have some questions and conversations about, because that's where you're going to understand how to be the best partner for your mate.
Well, yeah, and I mean, I think in that also the love languages. So if you were saying it earlier, if you have a person who is a doer, and you're one that needs to process, if it's, he or she is feeling sad, let me go get them flowers. Let me go do these things to show that I'm there and I care. But if the person's like, I just want you to talk and listen, I don't want you to do all those things, it's understanding how you communication, how you communicate differently, and how you need to find that common space to engage and communicate. So,
yes. Do you want to go? We're kind of at a great segue for my third point.
Go in your third, because I need to try to pull my thing up. Go ahead. Ooh, that came out wrong.
Notes? Pull your notes up?
Yeah, notes up. That's what they call it, notes.
All right. So my third point or lesson that I wish I would have known when we started this thing is to quote unquote be his wife. Emphasis on the person that you choose to marry. I think that a lot of us, before we walk into a marriage, think that there's, this is how a wife is supposed to be. This is how a husband is supposed to be. This is what marriage looks like. You should A, B, C, all the way through double Z, your marriage. There's a formula. But wifing, being a husband, is not a cookie cutter experience. And you have to understand who you are a wife to, because every man is going to have different needs, different likes, different desires. Your mom and your dad's marriage isn't going to be the way that your marriage is going to go, because y'all are, in that case, 4 different folks.
Yeah.
4 different people. You and your mom are not the same. Him and his dad are not the same, or him and your dad are not the same, whatever the case may be. So your marriage isn't going to run like anyone else's. It's going to be unique to your situation, and therefore you can't just go. That's why you can't necessarily take marriage advice from everybody else,
right?
Because their relationship isn't like yours.
Correct.
And so if someone says, I have a formula for how to make your man XYZ. No, not really. You can't do that, because your man and my man are 2 different folks.
Yep.
They're just different. And so I have to understand that I need to support Walter how he needs to be supported. I need to show him the attention that he needs. And I can't be like, well, men like blah, so that automatically applies to him because he's a man. Husbands like this. Well, that automatically applies to him because he's a man. No, I have to be the wife that Walter needs. And he can't be a generalized husband. He needs to be the husband that I need. And so that's going to look very different for everyone else. And if you think that a traditional marriage is, there's a specific list, a formula, a rule book, a playbook for everything, then you're going to have it jacked up. You can't call home. You can't call your best friend for advice on everything, because they are dealing with a man that isn't yours, with a partner that isn't yours. So you are going to know the nuances, the ins and outs, hopefully, if you're always learning of what your spouse needs, and how he's going to react, all those other things. And so therefore, I have to be his wife. You can be the wife to yours the way that he needs to be. And so just like parenting, wifing is there's not a formula for it. Not at all. Every situation is going to be different. Therefore, we can follow the best practices, but we can't follow a pre-made script about how to be a good wife, how to XYZ. You can't do it. And that idea of what marriage is supposed to be has to get tossed out so that you can figure out what your marriage is supposed to be.
I agree.
Yes.
What he need, what he want. Gotta put some wants in there too. Sprinkle a want in there. Sprinkle a want. That's my filler word. Adjust to change would be my third one, I would say.
Yeah.
And that's change in the spouse, that's change in me or the person. Because where I was at 30 is not where I am at 32, you know. But it's just that evolution and that change and growing and different circumstances coming up and what it means and how to communicate what you need, because that thing changes. And so I have to adjust to change. You know, when we first got together, we didn't have any kids. And then when our first child came, you know, that changed things up. When the multiple children after that showed up, you know, in a caravan, you know, just saying, hey, we're going to live with y'all, regardless of what you say. It was that adjustment. You know, it was an adjustment when we changed jobs and outside responsibilities came on us. And when it was that aspect of, again, like I said earlier, when you're dating and you live in two different places, excuse me, you have those places to retreat. Now, we're not advocating for you to shack up, for those who are, you know, religious, saying they say you can shack up now because you need to know. Nope, that's not what we're saying. We're saying in those moments when you're used to kind of retreating to yourself. So when I was dating, I can go back to my apartment, I can wake up at 7 o'clock in the morning, and I can play video games until 1 or 2. Go get something to eat, come back, finish up the video game or the movies or whatever, and then engage and just focus solely. Because part of me felt like I recharged, I kind of got what I needed. The introvert part of me was just kind of introverting. Well, when you marry someone and you're staying in the same house, and depending on the size of the house, and I'm not saying go get a mansion, I'm just saying depending on, you know, if you live in a 1-bedroom or a 2-bedroom, and you need to introvert, and you're used to introverting with no one else around, now you have to adjust to that change. How do you introvert? How do you get what you got used to getting when you were dating, knowing now that you're married, knowing now that that person's there? And then when you have kids who have no concept of boundaries,
none,
how do you adjust to that? And how do you not feel like you lose who you are? Because I think sometimes that's a big part of marriage of, do I need to lose who I am to become one with you? And then the fear of, that may be scary because I don't want to lose who I am. Like, I don't want to develop who I am just to lose who I am because I got married to you. And again, we're not advocating that's the case, but those are those things that come up. So how do you adjust to change? You got to learn how to do it. It's very important.
All right. I felt like our lessons, our top 3 lessons overlapped, even though we didn't plan it.
Right.
We just kind of went in here blind. I said, hey, Mr. Snipes, go write down 3 things you would tell yourself before you got married. And
boom, boom, boom.
We came back and kind of had the same lessons, which I think is awesome.
Yeah.
Of course, again, from different perspectives, however, similar lessons. And our goal is to have a forever marriage. And in a forever marriage, you are going to have to change, adapt, learn, be your wife, don't make assumptions, all of the other things that it takes. And so if you can just give yourself to the marriage without boundaries and vulnerably, without the prescriptions, then I think that the journey becomes more enjoyable, and you don't necessarily have this feeling like, oh, you know, we're doing horribly at this.
Well, you'll reach it to the destination.
Right.
You know, I've said it before, too much sunshine kills. It's a desert. Too much rain, it's not good. But you want that rainforest that is lush, but it also has some deadly things in there. And not that marriage is deadly.
Hopefully not.
Hopefully not. But it is one of those things where if you really want it to grow, it's that it's ever going process. It's always changing that you got to choose to be in. You got to make that choice. You got to choose to be in there. Otherwise, not necessarily what's the point, but it's one of those things where it's not what you want it to be. It's more than just the wedding day. It's more than just the honeymoon. It's the good times. It's the low times. It's the sometimes I want to protect myself from you, but why should I protect myself from you if I said I'm going to give you my heart and my vulnerability?
Right.
It's the know that I'm here for you and I need to be here for you and I need to listen to you. It's all of that. It's messy and it's unique and it's wonderful. It's marriage.
All right. So thank you for watching.
Yep.
And we have a couple of things planned. Hopefully we will get everything that we need lined up for the rest of the month and the people that we want lined up for the rest of the month. Otherwise, it'll just be us two.
Yep.
Team Snipes here. Talking to you about love, marriage, and what life looks like in this arrangement. So hopefully you're having a great morning start, and if you're watching this on replay, hope you're having a great day. We look forward to seeing you again next week, and take care. Remember to like, share, and follow Miss J.
Yes, follow, but not too close because I'm watching you. Get off my way.
All right, bye-bye.
I mean that.